Hi, my name is Catherine Bate. I'm the gala representative for Canada from the law firm of Miller Thompson in Toronto. I'm going to speak a little bit today about advertising law in Canada. It's regulated at both the federal and provincial level. At the federal level, we have legislation including competition, antitrust legislation, intellectual property, and privacy, all governing the advertising industry. At the provincial level, we also have the added layer of consumer protection legislation. And while it's generally similar from province to province, there are some important nuances to be aware of, and in particular, if running campaigns in Quebec, some very specific prohibitions and restrictions, notably a prohibition against advertising to children in the province of Quebec. And of course, in Quebec, we also have to be aware of French being the language of business and commerce, and therefore also the language of advertising. In terms of our self-regulatory regime, we have Advertising Standards Canada, which is our self-regulatory administrative body. And ASC, Advertising Standards Canada, is responsible for administration of the Canadian Code of Advertising Standards. This code sets out guidelines for the industry, ranging from everything from misleading representations to issues of safety to standards of human or public decency, which may include things like discriminatory depictions, even bullying. In terms of new developments and what we've seen recently, Canada's new anti-spam legislation has been getting a lot of press recently, which, well, it should. The legislation came into force in July of this past year and governs communications in email, text messaging, as well as some social media communications and computer program uploads. We've just started to see enforcement up to 1.1 million in the first case that was brought by the regulators, with penalties up to $10 million. So important legislation to be aware of if it's not something already on your radar. Of course, we can't also forget the good old Competition Act and pre-existing legislation, and we've seen increased enforcement from our Competition Bureau at a federal level in that regard. We've seen recent cases dealing particularly with adequate and proper substantiation for performance claims and product comparative claims as well. And price claims have also been a large area of enforcement for our Competition Bureau, particularly where full price has not been disclosed, and the Bureau has challenged the adequacy of disclaimers to include additional pricing. One final tip to bear in mind for advertising in Canada that often trips people up is we have less scope for puffery. For some reason, Canadians tend to be literalists, so be aware of that when coming up with those potential claims.